Welcome to Learn Commerce PU online classes. Don't forget to like our video and subscribe our YouTube channel for all the updates.
Hello students, welcome to the second PUC English online classes. In today's class, let us learn the lesson 4, that is Everything I Need to Know I Learned in the Forest, written by Vandana Shiva. Vandana Shiva, she is one of the leaders and board members of the International Forum on Globalization and a figure of the global solidarity. Vandana Shiva, she was born 5th November 1952, is an Indian scholar, environmental activist and anti-globalization author. Shiva, currently based in Delhi, has authored more than 20 books. Then she was trained as a physicist at the University of Punjab and completed her PhD on the hidden variables and non-locality in quantum theory from the University of Western Ontario, Canada. In 1982, she founded an independent institute, the Research Foundation for Science, Technology and Ecology in Dehradun, dedicated to high quality and independent research to address the most significant ecological and social issues of our times, working in close partnership with local communities and social movements. So, Vandana Shiva, she was called as Ecofeminist. She took a major role in the Ecofeminist movement. Vandana Shiva plays a major role in the global ecofeminist movement. According to her 2004 article Empowering Women, Shiva suggests that a more sustainable and productive approach to agriculture can be achieved through reinstating the system of farming in India that is more centered on engaging women. So, she believes that ecological destruction and industrial catastrophe that was a threat to the daily life and the maintenance of these problems have become the responsibility of women. So, before we come to the lesson, let us see what is ecology. Ecology is the branch of biology that deals with the relationship of organisms to one another and to their physical surrounding. On this earth, everything whatever is present on this earth, it may be the nature, human beings or any other creature, they are connected to each other because man cannot be separated from the earth or from the nature. So, in this lesson, what are we seeing? Let us see. So, in this essay, this is the lesson is the extract from Vandana Shiva's essay. In this essay, Vandana Shiva, she first tells us how she learnt about environmentalism from the uneducated women of Garhwal or Himalayan region. So, how she was interested and how she became the volunteer for this ecological movement and how she was influenced by the Garhwal women of Himalayan region. Let us see. Then also she tells us, while the government officials and men were cutting down trees for logs, the women showed them that the trees and forests were living things and we need to live with them. So, here women, they knew the value of the forest. So, women through their movement or through their resistance, they showed what is the importance of a forest or what is the importance of trees. Later Vandana Shiva in this essay, she tells us that she learnt all the major ideals of good life from the forest. And what are those ideals of good life? They are diversity of life forms, and the need to accept diversity is the principle of life. So, you know what is diversity? Diversity in the sense living together, or different attitudes or different actions or different things are accepted and lived together. It may be caste, it may be culture, it may be language, or it may be if we come to the nature, everything, whatever nature that provides us that. Earth is our mother and not just raw material to be exploited. We need to live in harmony with nature. So, earth is our mother, because how the mother provides everything to a child, whatever it requires, the same thing earth does, and earth is considered as a mother for every human being and also all the creatures on this earth. Then earth democracy, that what do you mean by earth democracy? That also we are learning from this lesson, that is respecting the freedom of all species of life to evolve and live together. So, what does earth democracy mean? Here respecting each and everyone, especially all the species of on the earth, and must understanding and we must understand that all species of life to evolve and live together. We have to respect and give freedom to all species of life who live together. Then the Indian tradition to ecology, as recognized by Tagore, the culture of the forest is the true Indian culture. And Vandana Shiva, she also refers in this essay, that is Tagore's writing, that is poetry of the forest. In that she wants us to tell that Indian culture is the development or that has developed from forest. Thus Vandana Shiva says that forest teaches the values of diversity, freedom and coexistence. So, Vandana Shiva, as I said, she is the Indian environmentalist, and also she spent her life in the defense and celebration of biodiversity and indigenous knowledge. So, in the beginning Vandana Shiva tells us about how she was influenced by the peasant women or the uneducated women of Himalayan region, and how she took interest in the ecological movement that she is explaining in the beginning of the essay or in the lesson. She tells us that her ecological journey had started in the forest of Himalayan region, and as a boost to that, her father was the forest conservator and her mother became farmer after fleeing the tragic partition of India and Pakistan. So, from her parents she learnt about the forest, and she said that she started her ecological journey from the region or from the forest of Himalaya. Then she tells us that her involvement in the contemporary ecology movement began with the Chipko. So, her involvement in the contemporary ecology movement began with Chipko. What is Chipko? Chipko is the non-violent response to the large scale of deforestation. Remember, Chipko is the movement, it is a non-violence response, no violence, no bloodshed or no any murder or any destruction or fights, anything, just it is a non-violent response to the large scale of deforestation. So, Vandana Shiva, her involvement in the contemporary ecology movement that began with the Chipko movement. As I said, Chipko movement is a non-violent response to the large scale of deforestation. You know what is deforestation? Cutting of the trees, number of trees and destruction of the nature or destroying the nature. So, here she tells us in the 1970s, peasant women from her region in the Garhwal Himalaya had come out in the defense of the forest. So, especially the Chipko movement was started by peasant women, and they started this movement by hugging the trees. Why? Because they realized the real value of the forest. How did they know the real value of the forest? Because they realized that logging had led to landslides and floods. Logging means cutting the trees and making the timber from it. That led to the landslides and floods and scarcity of water, fodder and fuel. Fodder in the sense food for the cattle, and also the fuel. Since women provide these basic needs, the scarcity meant longer walks for collecting water and firewood and a heavier burden. So, women must provide these kinds of requirement, especially water, then fodder and fuel. When there is a scarcity, that meant them longer walk and a heavier burden. And here, to avoid that, they realized they have to save the trees. That is why they knew the real value of the forest, that is not the timber, but the springs and streams. The real value of the forest are not the timber or dead tree, not the timber from a dead tree, but the springs and the streams, food for their cattle and fuel for their hearths. The women declared that they would hug the trees and the loggers would have to kill them before killing the trees. Here women realized the real value of the forest. That is why they decided to hug the trees, so that the tree cutters must cut them first and then they have to cut the trees. So that they decided to hug the trees, and that is called as a Chipko Moment. Then they sang a folk song. This is the folk song of the time 1970s, sung by the peasant women who led resistance against the tree cutters. That is, these beautiful oaks and rhododendrons, they give us cool water. Don't cut these trees, we have to keep them alive. This Vandana Shiva tells us that this is the song of the peasant women. Then in 1973, Vandana Shiva had gone to visit her favorite forest in the Himalayan region before she is leaving to Canada to do her PhD. Then when she went there, she had seen that the streams and the streams or the rivers, they have reduced to a trickle. There was no water, and those who are full of water now reduced to a trickle. Trickle in the sense little water was available in the ponds. Then by looking at this, she decided to become a volunteer for the Chipko Moment, and whenever she came to her mother or for her native place, then she spent time, or she spent her vacation doing padyatras. Padyatra, you know, walking pilgrimages, documenting the deforestation and the work of the forest activists and spreading the message of Chipko. So, she decided to involve herself in the ecological movement and support the forest activists. So, that is why whenever she came to her native during the vacation, she spent her time in doing padyatras and also documenting the deforestation and the work of the forest activists. Then there was a dramatic Chipko movement took place in the Himalayan region and the Himalayan region, and the name of the village is Advani in 1977. There a woman called Bachni Devi, who led resistance against her own husband, who obtained the contract to cut the trees. She hugged the trees and led resistance against her own husband. She told him first he had to cut her, then he had to touch the trees. When officials arrived at the forest, the woman held up lighted lanterns although it was broad daylight. So, here you can see a different or different attitude of the women, that is the women held the lighted lanterns during the broad daylight when the officials came to see this resistance. The forester asked them to explain what is the reason behind holding these lighted lanterns on this broad daylight. The women replied, "We have come to teach you forestry." Then they replied, "You foolish women, how can you prevent tree felling by those who know the value of the forest? Do you know what forests bear? They produce profit and resin and timber." So, here the forest cutters or forester, they came and they asked the women, "What is this foolish thing? Why are you holding the lamps during the broad daylight?" Then the women replied, they wanted to teach them what forestry is. So, here the forester, they said that you are the foolish women, you do not know the real value of the forest, and the real value of the forest is according to the forest cutters, that is profit, resin in the sense the thick substance used in making varnish, and timber. So, here the women replied and said strongly, they said that what is the value of the forest or what forest is to them. They said, the women sang back in chorus, "What do the forests bear? Soil, water and pure air. Soil, water and pure air sustain the earth and all she bears." So, women really, they knew the real value of the forest. They said that the forests bear soil, water and pure air which sustain the earth and all she bears. Without water, without soil and without pure air, nothing can be lived on this earth. So, this is what Vandana Shiva, she explains in her essay, that how she learnt about the ecology and about the how she was influenced towards the ecological movement. She explains in the first set of the essay. And here we can see how women, they started the ecological movement, those uneducated women especially. This is what Vandana Shiva tells in her essay. In the next session, let us see how Vandana Shiva, she gave her support, or how she practiced biodiversity and how she supported biodiversity. Let us see in the next session.